Hey, you're about to listen to an older episode of the Volunteer Youth Worker podcast. This is a podcast that Sid Coop, Jason Ballard, and myself, Jeremy McDonald, started back in 2018 to answer the practical questions that you're asking in your youth ministry. But lots has changed since we started it in 2018. We've changed the name. We're doing new and different events and lots of other things. The thing that hasn't changed, though, is the content you're about to listen to, we think is still really valuable. But if you notice that some of the things we're talking about are obviously a little bit older, that is okay. You can always head to youthworker.community to stay up to date with what's happening currently right now here in 2024, and you can track along with us there. We'd love to see you. But enjoy this episode. Episode 124 of the Youth Ministry Team podcast. I got Sid here, and we have got kind of a fun conversation, Sid, but one that as time passes is increasingly maybe hard to pin down. If
Dude,
that's fair to say.
Even since we recorded, Jer, things have shifted for sure. But I think the heart of it remains the same no matter what the context. And what I hope will happen is it'll just make us kind of aware, oh yeah, we should be thinking about some of the ways that we can help kids feel safe and comfortable in our spaces, and acknowledge that our kids are coming from really unique and different environments or ways of thinking, and we should just try to assess that and respond accordingly. So, Jer, I love it. It is unique times. Oh man, it's unique times. And I hope that this will help us think in some kind of different ways about the times that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So should you high five people when you gather again? This is a conversation we got to have with our friend Jason Ballard. Some great thoughts and ideas for sure for you, wherever you're serving, whatever you're up to in terms of youth ministry. If your point leader has given you, if you're a volunteer on the front lines, you got a small group and your point leader has given you this podcast, welcome to this space. There are over 100 episodes of all sorts of different topics. So we hope that even if this is your very first one, that you would feel comfortable going back through, looking and finding different things that will help you out as you lead in youth ministry, because we honestly love what you're doing. We think you're making an eternal difference and want to get behind you as best as we possibly can to support the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I love that.
Now, Sid, before we jump into the conversation, we should just invite people, if they're listening to this live, this fall, we're going on tour in our country, Canada. We got lots of listeners that are beyond our borders. So this is just for our friendly Canadian listeners. But we're going to be in 22 Canadian cities this October with our On the Road tour, and they're invited to that, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Please come, you guys. We're really I'm excited to be in the room with youth workers again, Jer. And hey, we know that our time together, in our preparation, we thought about point leaders or culture shaping volunteers that would be in that space. And what we want to do is we want to help you reimagine the calling and passion that God's given you, your vision for your youth ministry. We want to reimagine that together. Think about how to be able to articulate that well to invite people into something that is so incredibly important to us. And then also, Jerry, you and I both know that it's our teams that actually make a difference. And even through the pandemic, ministries that had multiple volunteers that were committed to engaging with students relationally, that decentralization was so important. And the question we want to answer is, hey, how can we help make our teams even more effective? How can we inspire? How can we equip? How can we just help lead our teams to more effectively disciple the kids that God's placed in their care, no matter what the kind of context is that we find ourselves in? And we know that changes from province to province, even within our country. And so we're excited to be a part of that conversation with youth workers for a couple of weeks. So really looking forward to it. Got to get on our website, right? Check that out.
Yep.
Youthworker.community.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, 100%.
And last thing before we go, lots of people are making the tour happen and getting excited about it. So Trinity Western University, one of the sponsors of the tour, also sponsor of the podcast. And so they love youth workers in Canada. It's actually pretty nuts. The work that they do and the way that they just love sponsoring stuff and getting excited about it. So we want to make sure we give them a nice shout out here.
Yeah, and you know what, Jared, not only do they help, not only do they partner with us on these tours, but honestly, they are thinking so innovatively about how to equip people to how to equip young adults to make a difference in their cultural context, whatever that is, for the sake of the kingdom. So we not only appreciate their partnership and their passion for the next generation, but also how they're actively equipping, training, resourcing, and developing, leaders within their environments. And so you need to check out Trinity Western University. Hey, listen, if you're a youth worker and you just want to up your leadership game, Trinity Western has a number of different programs that you don't have to move the family and go get on campus, but you can actually access online. It's going to be really helpful for you. So please take a look at Trinity Western University. We love the work that they're doing.
Yeah, if you're tired of youth ministry and you need to get into a different vocation, you can go to Trinity Western University. They'll set you up for your next phase of life. But please don't leave youth ministry. We think it's worthwhile sticking it.
No, just get better equipped for youth ministry, or maybe take a break. Like just rest your brain for a minute.
Turn off the podcast, go take a nap, and it's going to be all right. All right, well, let's jump into today's conversation we got to have with Jason Ballard.
Welcome to the Youth Ministry Team Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the team of volunteers. So this podcast is for the whole team. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you're asking so you can be encouraged and equipped as you head into your role in your youth ministry this week.
All right, everybody, welcome to perhaps the most important question that we will ever get to here on the Youth Ministry Team Podcast. Sid and I have brought in the preeminent youth ministry expert in our country of Canada, maybe internationally,
I think
forever
globally.
and ever.
Yeah.
Globally, yeah, Jason Ballard. Yeah. Jason, can you tell us, should
definitively,
youth workers,
right now, definitively,
yes or no, should you high five people when you gather now?
Well, the real question is, what is a high five? I mean, we have to sort of get a little philosophical.
Thanks for being so definitive, bro.
This is what we're here to talk. First of all, definitely not an expert. I'm passionate about youth ministry, and sometimes passion can be mistaken for expertise. I've been recycling Marv and Sid's content for the last 2 years wherever I go, and so everything I share is usually just some sort of derivative pull from something I learned from Sid. But I'm glad we're talking about this because I think we need to think about, let's just use a real-time example. Restrictions are opening. So my buddy just told me that he no longer, as of a certain date, he doesn't have to wear a mask on the bus. Public transit. That's crazy. Like, that's hard for me to even imagine right now, given our context. And this is all going to open up real fast. What's interesting, though, is even though he won't wear a mask on the bus now, other people will. Why? Because people are dealing with all sorts of different emotions and thoughts about what keeps them safe, and not just keeps them safe, makes them feel safe. Now, there's an appropriate place for conversations to be had about, what does that mean? And what's the science behind all that? Yada, yada, yada. But our youth ministry's primary goal, and we have to hear this, when we gather online or in person, one of our number one goals, there's a couple other goals probably equal to this, but right up there at the top is that students would feel safe. And so the question is, as we roll into the future post-pandemic, very practically when it comes to sanitizer, masks, high fives, being in people's physical space, what's going to help students feel safe? And the big thing is this: we can't assume that every student feels the exact same way. So that's really what we're chatting about today.
Yeah, and Jay, this applies all over the place, so it shouldn't be shocking that it applies to this area. You and I have had multiple conversations that when it comes to praying for kids, placing a hand on a young person, asking if we can do that, if they're okay with that. Like, we sense the situation in terms of what's going to be a safe experience for the young person, assuming we don't know the framework they're coming from and all that sort of thing. We just know that we want to be able to serve them well, and that's going to happen when they feel safe in presence with us. That applies to this situation right here. Absolutely. This isn't a time for us to make like a political statement, to try to move a dial. This is a time for us to love our kids well, and acknowledging that it's going to be somewhat unique for each kid, but we should be aware and sensitive to that and be willing to sacrifice some of our own kind of conveniences or dispositions for the sake of those kids that are in our care and our ministries.
So maybe I can ask it this way: How do you take the cues from kids and families as we regather in such a way that we've got the right posture? Because it can be a little bit confusing. Like, if somebody's getting out of the vehicle and you don't necessarily know, do we need to hold up signs? Yeah. Do we have to ask questions? Have two lines? Like, this is the high five line. This is the stay away from me line. How does it work?
Man. Okay, there's two things. I want to answer that specific question, but even as you're asking it, some things came to mind. Like, you just said, is there a line for this, like this? And you're being tongue in cheek about it. But actually, part of making students feel safe is that if somebody is the minority holding on to wearing a mask, let's say, how do they not feel unnecessarily isolated because of that? And so that means we don't say things from the front or to the whole group that assumes that everybody has the exact same convictions or beliefs on these things. Secondary is, I just realized that one thing that's going to happen, and this hasn't crossed my mind, this is more for the point leader, but there are going to be some people that fall through the cracks on reopening because we're going to assume we now can leave behind those online spaces for in-person spaces. And there's some people that might not be ready for that full in-person space. And so there's a new type of falling through the crack. There was a falling through the cracks when we switched to online. And I know that some people have been listening, doing hybrid, all of the above, people around the world, different restrictions, different provinces, all that kind of stuff. But there's an opportunity to reflect too, as we shift our programs, how do we not cause people to fall through the cracks? Now, you asked a specific question, Jer, and that was about how do we know? And that's got to be relational. It's got to be relational in the sense, and where we can just ask, and not assume. But in order for that to even be a positive experience, we can't create an environment where the general assumption is one thing over the other, if you know what I mean. So it's like we have to, at least for the season ahead, assume that people are on a transition journey, different. They're like transitioning into different rhythms and habits around social spaces. And even for some students, it's going to be anxiety inducing to be back in a room with so many people, or to be in a small group where people want to wrestle, or whatever it might be. These are all new things, so we just have to think really critically about it. I think it's having eyes to see, looking at body language. It's having the courage just to have the conversation. If you particularly know a family that's been maybe more intense along the way, it wouldn't be a bad idea to reach out to the parents in advance. Just say, hey, how are you guys processing this? The restrictions have changed based off of government recommendations. How are you guys doing? How are you processing? And here's the thing. Any excuse for a personal conversation with a student or parent is a good excuse. And so I don't see this as something that's exhausting or burdensome. I'd see this as a great excuse to get back on the phone or to have a personal conversation. And then to say, people are going to feel love, like, oh man, they took the time to care. And so I think there's a great opportunity there.
Well, and even Jay, like when we, as we bounce in and out of opportunities to be in person or not in person in different unique ways, one of the things that we knew was really important is good lines of communication and filling those lines well. So letting parents know what was happening, let them know what was kind of the environment we were attempting to create, how we would be processing or responding to different realities. And I think this is another one of those times where we can't under communicate. So make sure parents know when we're meeting, here are the things that we're thinking about, or invite feedback. We'd love to hear what you think about how this environment could be in this way. This is how we want to approach people and talk to them. So we can start passing on that kind of culture already to parents and through parents to students so that we have the best possible opportunity to create that safe space for kids as they show up. And I think the other thing is too, like you said, Jay, you mentioned like our relationships should dictate. It's okay to ask the question, but not in a threatening manner. Like go, hey, great to see you again. For tonight, what's going to be more comfortable for you? Fist pump, high five, or just a little bit of space? Because whatever it takes, that's great. I just want to hear how you're doing. And so if we, we can appropriately ask those kinds of questions. I do think you guys, and we've mentioned this before too, like it's pretty easy for kind of a group movement to happen and kids can get marginalized quickly, even silently. And so just thinking through what is the culture that we want to have for when kids arrive, how we talk about these things, how we interact with each other, like quick example, in our environment, we said like junior high boys, some kids don't grow as fast as others. Size is a significant thing. In our culture, we didn't make jokes about that little guy or that sort of thing. That was just something we didn't do, didn't mock that way. We didn't think it was helpful for people to feel welcome and safe. And so we said our culture's not going to have that, and we dealt with that. And I just think there's some of those culture things that we should talk of as volunteer teams, how we want to make this space really safe and how we can best engage and interact with our kids physically within this space and have a culture that all kids can feel really welcome there.
Maybe I should just ask too, what's the best way to bring this up in case there's maybe a volunteer and it seems like other volunteers aren't catching this. So, somebody's listening and they're like, yeah, I want to be sensitive to this. I get that it's a sensitive thing, but like, I've got some folks in my ministry, the other adults, and they're like, once the restrictions, like they wanted to do like a mask burning ceremony and, they wanted to get political about things and it just kind of seemed out of place. Is there a way to even help remind other volunteers, other team members of the importance of this?
My favorite way whenever someone is maybe, doing something that's not helpful for the whole is just to talk behind their back. So go to don't go directly to them. Just like... talk a lot about it with other leaders. Even to students, like go straight to the students, talk about the other leader. And I just find that creates the kind of environment where eventually it will get back to them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
that's great. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, because it'll come back in like nuanced ways, it's probably going to be more effective, like have a deeper impact.
I really hope everyone knows that was sarcasm. And no, that's never happened. Like that would never happen in a church environment, you know. Oh, I don't know, Jerry, you're better than me at this stuff. Like just to have, I mean, it's, you got to figure out a way. There's got to be a way we can talk to one another, but not like assume the best. Yeah. And so if somebody's doing something, let's say that you think isn't ideal for other students, there's one narrative that says this individual doesn't care. They're unloving, they're unkind, and they yada, 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 yada. They're trying to make a point. Let's just assume the best. They don't realize how this is making people feel. It's never crossed their mind. And then so that way you can go into the conversation assuming the best. And I learned in like, we learn in like marriage seminars to find better language. And so even in Pete and Jerry Cesaro, they say like, hey, like find a way to communicate to your spouse, like kindly about stuff. And so they say, they ask questions like, hey, it puzzled me. Like I found myself wondering like why you kept coming in late when we talked about dinner being at 6. I'm wondering if there's something I just don't fully understand or whatever. And that's great for marriage. I don't know if that works for other youth leaders, but there's got to be a posture to come in just says, hey, I just wanted to chat a little bit. I know that, you've been making these comments or like throwing around high fives, and I know you've been really excited to get back. I just wonder, have you thought about how it's making students feel? Wonder if you're up for a chat about it. And, they might want to push you a little bit too. Like, and that can be a really good conversation. But Jaron said, you guys are better than me at this stuff. Sid's the best at direct communication that I know. What do you think, Sid?
Well, just as you're speaking, Jay, and I'll just try this out. I think that sometimes, like you said, for that leader, they have a purpose or a mission that they actually are trying to bring into the space that they think actually might be helpful. We shouldn't be so afraid, but whatever it is. And I think if I can put a face to it, that can help, especially for my good leader, reevaluate what they're doing. So if I can say to my leader, hey, Jeff, I'm not quite sure, what's going on. I'm seeing this. I'd love to hear that. But I just know that over there, like Jake has come from a space where, he has compromised in her home. I know they're wrestling with what this looks like. And for him, this is a huge step to be here. I don't think this is helpful for bringing him in. And your good leaders are going to get that because now it's actually about a person, not just an idea or an ideology. And so if I can move that there, and I love what you said, Jay, as well, let's clarify before we confront. I think that's kind language is really important. We assume the best, but if we can put a face to it sometimes in the conversation, that can help them really understand what's at stake. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, and I really liked, Jay, you said earlier too about any excuse to have a conversation with families is a great thing. So, leaders that are listening, just worthwhile, even checking in. If you haven't already, as things, lift and restrictions, die down, to double check with families where they're at with stuff. And hopefully you did that even during the pandemic. I know, we work with a number of churches, and there's a couple situations where there were families that were very much not against, that's the wrong way of angling it, but, were hesitant on some of the restrictions, you didn't want their kids wearing masks and that sort of thing, and had exemptions, but also didn't want their kid to feel ostracized because they were out in public without those kinds of things. So it's complex, and it's people, and it's worth talking to people about these things.
You know what? That idea, Jer, of like communicating, I honestly think doing surveys with parents and with students is a great tool, and like, we've just found with our church, we did one sort of survey and we asked questions that were like COVID related, but we also asked a lot of other things, like what ministry you're primarily connecting with, what do you most enjoy or most resonate with as part of the church. We got the most interesting data, guys, like the most interesting stuff, things that really surprised us, stuff that really stood out, the way people are feeling connected. And so it's one of those things, like any excuse to like facilitate a conversation, there's a really great opportunity here a couple times over the next few months, potentially to do like a student survey or a parent survey as a great way to engage parents. It creates another follow-up opportunity. You can send out highlights from it. Anyways, that's a really practical, simple thing you can do. And I would say don't waste it on just one thing. So if you are making it primarily about reopening, sneak some other questions in there. Hey, what are you most going to miss, or what have you most missed over the year, or what are you most looking forward to? And questions like that help you get a sense of your programming decisions and things like that.
Love that.
That's great. Any last words, Sid, as we wrap things up?
Yeah, just a quick framing. You know, in Mark chapter 10, when the disciples are trying to keep the kids from coming to Jesus when he's speaking, and Jesus, you know, he becomes indignant and says, "Don't hinder the children from coming to me." I've used that framework in thinking through traditions and different practices that we might be committed to, but actually aren't helpful. We should hold with an open hand. And I think as we move back into this next space, that's a great principle to be thinking about. Are there things that we've done in the past, would even like to do, that might actually hinder kids from coming to Jesus? Let's set those aside. Let's evaluate that, and let's do whatever we can to help kids experience Jesus in a really safe community. And that's the vision that we're a part of. So, man, I'm excited about it, you guys, but it doesn't lack complexity for sure, but we've been called to this time. So let's go.